Michael, I'm retired. Came down to Frankston twice, once in 1968 and then again when we moved out to Campbell, then came back again in 1984. So basically been in Frankston all that time.
What do you like most about living in Frankston?
Fresh air, I love the sea. I think the sea's in my family and love the atmosphere, love living in Frankston. It's just a nice place.
Tell me about your favourite times from living in Frankston.
Some of my earliest times we used to have holidays down at Rosebud. And we used to drive through Frankston, of course, when I was a kid, about 19 and 1950s. And we used to stop over at a cake and cake shop down in Frankston. It was up near the toilets there, and those toilets there. Next one, actually, not the state station now, but it used to be a cake shop. They used to make brilliant cakes. We used to come down here, sit in the car and buy our cakes and pasties, and then drive off down to where we were going, Dramana or Rosebud for holiday. That's probably my fondest memory of actually seeing Frankston. And then you go to holidays at Rosebud, and Mum always found out when she turned into Frankston, she used to have bad asthma, and as soon as she turned around the corner to come into Frankston, it would just disappear. So she always wanted to come to live in Frankston, which we finally did in 1968. And I had a job in the city. I used to commute backwards and forwards to Frankston all the time.
Did you go to school in Frankston?
No. All my schooling was down in Campbell. I used to live at Canterbury. So all my schooling was out at Canterbury. All my younger memories in Frankston were only from 1968 when I came down here. So, for argument's sake, some of the things I remember when I first came, I used to go to Frankston, where the 3 hotels are at the moment, in that corner there, down in... There used to be a Holden dealership at the bottom. I think it was, say for argument's Bayside Holden was there, and they had this really old shed beside where that new hotel has been built. And the road used to go along, and then used to go dip over the hill and go down onto the other side. It wasn't 4 lanes, so they'd actually had to go down and around to swing up to go drive up that oldest hill. And one of the times I was coming, we hadn't been down here for quite a while, and one time when we were coming down here, and we built a house down at Frankston in 1968, I just automatically drove down, that roadway because now it was 2 lanes now. I was actually driving towards the oncoming traffic. I'd forgotten, but my memory always told me that you had to go down and around, but I was totally wrong. So that caused a bit of a problem, but anyhow. And then, so then we moved down to Frankston in 1968, and at that time, Quayside, Bayside wasn't there at all, just like an open paddock. So just there was a big shed with an engineering place there, and a couple of miners. I think it was a wood shed and auto electricians. But all that area was basically open, nothing. Remember where Quayside is now? The library was up at the Mechanics Hall. Then they built that area where the new Hoyt Cinema complex is, but that was just a car park, and a library was built there. Although the library was sort of like an L shape. That was there. Then of course, then they moved up to the new library in the cultural centre. But all that was all that there was just an open car park with the shops surrounding it, and where Bounty Shop was, that was something else too. But all those shops around there were all sort of different now. What they used to be.
What did you do for fun in Frankston?
For fun. We used to, I was 18, 19 at the time, so mainly my fun was in Melbourne. When we came here, we used to go to movies, or mainly go down to the beach. We loved going down to the beach. When my nephews came down, they were very, very small, and we always used to take them down to the beach because the beach was sort of #1 priority. And of course, all that development of the beach area wasn't there at all. It was just, nothing. It was a yucky place. Really. When we came here the second time in the 1980s, where McDonald's is now used to be Brickworks, and it was only a single lane road. So when we moved up to this house here, when we came here, the Marylands estate. We've got the Marylands had a wall for the gate for the estate. We've got a lot of their white bricks. We had them. My next door neighbour had them, and we've got them from him. So all the white bricks actually are part of the Marylands estate entrance, and that little house down there, that's the sales entrance for Marylands estate. And when we came up here, the house at the corner was the last house being built, and all this was vacant land. There was nothing here, and there was only two lanes of traffic for Cranbourne Road, and Coringal was only that's a small shopping centre. They said had Big W and Safeway because they were separate entities, and some shops there, and that shop, the florist, they were our next door neighbours where we used to live. Joan and his husband, and they've been there in Kringle ever since. Much quieter then, of course, than it is now. Much more busier. I mean, a lot of us are just gone and come and gone, you know, sort of thing. Because I think I mentioned to you that time when Angela came down here. She's been here 20 years. They always used to say this is an English area, you know, it doesn't change. It's a real Western English area, you know, there'll be nobody here of anything other than that. Of course, now it's completely changed, you know, it's become much more multicultural, much more alive, and that's a couple of things I was going to say. I do remember I used to go to a Chinese restaurant. Where the disco place is now, used to be a really big Chinese restaurant, and then it moved because we used to buy Chinese food there, and then it moved from there down to the Hoyts on the Kenlock Creek. Kenlock Creek's changed completely. I mean, that's much more developed than it used to be. And Linton's, when we came down here, Linton's were in Humphreys Road. It was be owned by the father and his sons, and we used to drive around here in Humphreys Road and just pick up their stuff, and then of course they moved to Mount Eliza to make it a bigger and better place.
How did you meet your wife?
I just through mutual friends. I met her, and my mum was alive at the time, and then she passed away about a year after we got married. But then she came down here, and our son was born down here. It used to be Peninsula Private down the road there. Of course, moved up there, and then he was born down there. He went to Hailbury a little while, then he came across to Kingsley Park Primary and Frankston High, now to Modern High. Of course, the transport we had, of course, the train service has always been a trouble down here. And I can remember going to Frankston. I mean, it used to get so hot because the trains used to sit in the railway yard, and we had those red rattlers in those days. And the leather seats would be like so hard you couldn't even sit down. And the fog, we used to get really bad fogs down in Frankston. And one time it was a real pea super, and it took us. I got the train normally at 5 o'clock to work in the city, and I think I got back here about 8:15 because the train driver couldn't see the signals. It was a real pea super, and I used to catch a bus home. And this particular time, the bus driver waited for us because he knew there was half a dozen people. We used to catch the bus, or mostly regular, and he just waited for us. Now, what does that do now? I don't know, but he just waited for us and then drove us home. And another time was when we had the terrible floods in Melbourne. At the time, had water rushing down Collins Street, and the water all over the railway yards. And I had a car at the time. You couldn't drive back. To get back home that night, drive via Doncaster, because that was basically the only way you could get home. I had to drive down Doncaster and then get back to Frankston. I got home finally about 8:30 at night. That was all terrible floods in Melbourne. That was when the Elizabeth Street floods came, and they actually flooded all the stores underneath Elizabeth Street.
How have the values changed from back in the day to now?
I hope people react to each other.
Yeah.
Probably saying it'd be a normal thing. I think people are less likely to react now than they used to. I mean, it seemed to be a bit more friendly, easygoing days, but now it seems a bit more, not so much caring. I noticed that we used to have neighbourhood watch around here to get the people to go around to the school around the corner, and we had our meetings and that sort of thing, and people you'd know the people who were looking after your house and this and that, but one of those things made, not enough money, so it sort of stopped. And you don't find as many people now, because especially around here, there's a lot of rental areas, rental places, so they're not going to worry about whether their house is broken in or not. I mean, it's friendly, but it's not as friendly as it used to be, I don't think. How I find it now. It's more, like all things in life, so more money orientated, work, and work, and that's the thing. With your neighbours, like at one stage we only had our next door neighbours. They've been here nearly time a bit longer than Angela, and we know them, but I mean all the other people sort of come and go all the time, which is not as good as it used to be. But I mean, like with we all the same older people, they say about the kids in the area. I mean, the trouble which we didn't seem to have. I remember years ago, and I think I told you, that area was there completely vacant land, and the police helicopter came and were chasing a couple of kids on motorbikes because they were doing the wrong thing. But I mean, they don't seem to worry about that now. Kids just do what they want to do, and the police say, oh yes, well, one of those things, and which is a change. Kringle's changed dramatically. It used to be just a small shopping centre, I think, before. Then they had the next development, then another development. I mean, that's huge now. When they put the cinema complex on, that's the thing. I mean, that's great. I mean, where we are now, where before when we came, the buses are rather frequent, but now you've got the frequency of the buses. You've got your hospitals, you've got doctors. I mean, there weren't any doctors around, and the closest one was along Cranbourne, the closest one along Warren. But now they're absolutely everywhere, and things like that have changed. The transport's changed, the shopping centre's changed. You don't really need a car here now anymore. We could just basically do with it.
If you could change anything about today's world, what would you do to bring back some of the old values?
Just make people understand it, to more be concerned about other people, more concerned about other people's values and ideas, and not be so standoffish and say, well, you know, bad luck sort of thing. Increase people's idea of looking after each other, which I think we seem to have lost somehow along the way. And value other people's property, like at least instilling in the kids, their home, that's their property, you don't touch it. You know, you've got your property, you look after yours, they look after theirs, you know. But I mean, I think, you know, time has changed, so we've got to change with it.
What's the most exciting thing that's ever happened to you in Frankston?
Tall boats that came in 1978, when we had the centenary. We had the little boats come up the bay. We couldn't see it from our balcony. We couldn't see it, of course. So I stood on a ladder with a pair of binoculars on my patio and looked out across the bay and just saw the ships, you know, sailing up. That was a really exciting time. Angela took Danny to see the Olympic torch when it came, so the runners of that. She always used to think that was they ran across along Cranbourne Road, heading towards Cranbourne, and she said that was great. Little Danny was a little fella, you know, he's only about he was 5 or 6 or something like that. They stood down on Cranbourne Road and looked at the flames going past, you know, so I think it was pretty exciting.